sessions. They're really great, cover a variety of different topics. We look at the way Trent does his presentation. You're able to go ahead and interact with him and ask questions right in the flow of the presentation. Not all presenters do it that way, but we're really fortunate that Trent does do it that way. It's a very interactive workshop. So with that said, please spread the word to your fellow Realtor members. We'd love to see them on here. And to those of you who have been coming here time in and time out, thank you very much. We really appreciate the support and the turnout, because it was phenomenal in 2020. So with that, we're going to get into the presentation today. Trent Pettus, he's an awesome contributor to the organization. He's done several of these over the last year. Usually does them in person, but the great thing about this is that he gets to have actually more people in front of him. So I think that one of the upsides of going in this format allows for us to not be confined by a classroom. And clearly Trent is not confined to Philadelphia. He can go wherever and do his work. So the documents that Trent is going to be using today, I dropped a link into the chat. So there should be 4 or 5 different documents that he's going to be referring to during the course of the conversation today. So you can find all of them there. And with that, Trent Pettus, the floor is yours. Good morning, Trent.
Good morning, Matt. Thank you. Good morning, everyone. Could you all now, of course, I'm looking at a big old black screen on my TV. Is it possible if you all could open your videos, only if you like? I mean, so I'm not just looking at a totally black screen. It's kind of, I feel like when I do this, if I don't see anyone, it's almost like just talking to my computer. If you wouldn't mind, but if you don't, that's fine. But apparently most of you don't. So, but if you will, I appreciate it. All right, so I just want to get an idea, like what most of you, how many new agents are on? I mean, just give me an idea. Kind of, you can't raise your hand because you're all dark. Let me see, raise your hand if you're you've been in a business less than a year. Can you just raise your hand or say something? Because you can leave your mics. You don't have to mute yourself, because I do want this to be interactive. As Matt said, I like you to talk to me. You can interrupt me. Let's make this interactive, all right? Stop me if you don't understand something. Just interrupt me. I guess I can't tell how many new agents because no one's speaking and I'm looking at a big black.
Trent.
Yes.
We are sun glared. We're glared by your beautiful sun.
I'm sorry. Is it better if I move this? Is that better?
Yes.
Yeah, we can see the palm trees better.
I'm sorry. It's sunny Florida, and it's going to be like 80 today. I'm sorry. The sun is out. I'm so sorry. Goodness gracious. All right. So I appreciate it. I'm sorry. Thank you, Lisa. Was that Lisa Risco? My friend Lisa. All right. Let me know if you want me to shut these. I can shut the blinds if it makes it. Is this okay?
No.
Shut them?
Yes, please.
This is taking interactive to a whole other level. We're going vertical blinds.
I want to shut the other side. All right. Is that better? You all see me? I can't even see myself better, so I guess it's okay. All right. Good morning again. Good morning. I just wanted to, so there are some new agents on. I don't know how many, but what about, there are experienced agents. Agents have been in the business for, let's say, over 5 years. How many? I know I see Kathleen, I know, and Mark, and I know Lisa's on. So, all right, let's just kind of get started. Just so those of you who don't know me, I'm just quickly, I've been in this business, I think I got a license in 2009. I was working in corporate America, decided to get into real estate. I started part-time like a lot of you because I tell people I like food with my meals. So I knew I wouldn't make money right away. So I saved money up for 6 months and then I decided to go for it. And I've been okay. The first year or two, I didn't do as well, but as of my third year, I think I was at Remax at that point, and I've always made the 100% club, which meant you earn between $100,000 and $250,000 in commission. That's what your take home was. So I've never done less than that. So I've had a good career. I love this business. Got a broker's license probably 5 years later. Opened my own business in 2010. I've got a broker's license in Delaware a couple of years after I got it in Pennsylvania. And 6 months ago, I got a broker's license here in Florida. And I just opened an office a few months ago. And I'm working with my first client in Florida. That's why I'm here. Bought this condo a few years ago, really didn't use it. Now I'm gonna spend a lot of the winters in Florida now that I can do this, because I teach at Temple, so I can do my classes here. I can do these things. So so I love it here. All right, and I'm literally on the beach. I'm on Ocean Drive. I can walk to the beach in 2 minutes. So it's kind of nice. And after I'm finished with you all, I'm going to the beach. All right, let's go. You all look so depressed. I mean, goodness.
After that,
What is it in Philadelphia? 75, 70? What is it?
39 degrees.
You say
come on.
79? That's pretty
39. 39.
We're hitting a high
Oh.
of 44 today.
Ah, well, it's a little cold, but cold is good for the soul. Good for the soul. All right, let's get started. All right, let's take out that you don't have a copy of the buyer agency contract, right? Let's talk about the buyer agency contract. First of all, the buyer agency, it's called the buyer tenant agency contract, because you can use this if you're working with a tenant, you would use this same document. But I'm going to say buyer, but you can always substitute tenant. So if you were working with a tenant, you would use the same document. But I'm just going to use the word buyer for the sake of this, because most of us are probably going to be using it for that purpose. But of course, if you all work with a tenant, use the same form. All right, now this is what we call an exclusive buyer agency. There are 3 types of buyer agencies. The Pennsylvania Association of Realtors recommends this form. This is the one that most of you use. This is probably the one that most brokers would, this is probably the only one that most brokers would use, because the difference between exclusive buyer agency is that even if the buyer finds a property on his or her own during the period of this contract, then that buyer would still owe commission to the broker. In other words, if this contract is good until, let's say, the end of March, and the buyer finds a property on his own in February, your company would still have earned a commission. So the exclusive buyer, and they don't have exclusive buyer. I really think the form should say exclusive buyer agency contract, but this is what we call an exclusive buyer agency contract. So it does not matter who helps that buyer locate at a property that he or she ultimately buys. It would be the buyer's responsibility to still pay the broker a fee. The brokerage has earned a fee regardless of who helps this buyer find and close on this property. So this is the only form that I would use. There are a couple other exclusive There's what we call an exclusive agency buyer agency. That's the second kind of buyer agency contract. Exclusive buyer, I always forget, is exclusive agency buyer agency. I forget it because I would never use it. Exclusive agency buyer agency, which just means that if the buyer were to find the property on his or her own, then the buyer would not owe a commission to the broker. That's the difference. Exclusive agency buyer agency. Everything else is the same, but if that buyer finds a property on his or her own during that period before this lease, this contract expires, then that buyer will not owe you. And so I don't know if I would want to be working with the buyer for possibly months to have that buyer then go to an open house or see something on Craigslist, put in an offer, get it accepted, and then you would not be entitled to a commission. So I would use and only would use this exclusive buyer agency. And the third one is called a non-exclusive buyer agency, which it is what it sounds like. A non-exclusive buyer agency, it simply means that the buyer can hire as many brokers as he or she wants to help him or her locate a property. But whoever finds that property that the buyer ultimately closes on, that would be the brokerage that would earn the commission. If the buyer were to locate that property his or herself, then no one would earn a commission. That's a non-agency buyer agency. So that buyer could work with multiple brokers at the same time, while at the same time looking for a property on his or her own. And if that buyer were to locate that property on his or her own, then you would not be entitled to a commission. Having said all that, this is a form that Pennsylvania Association of Realtors recommends, and I'm sure most brokers will only use the exclusive buyer agency. All right, so having said, let's kind of dig into it. Any questions, comments? All right, look at the line 1. Let's look at the company, broker. That's clear. You put in the name of the company, not the name of your broker. I think at one point they had to put company because I remember sometimes seeing people write the broker's name like John Smith, their broker of record, as opposed to the brokerage. So that is simply the name of the company. The full name, you should write the full name. These are contracts. Write the full name. Don't write Weichert. Weichert what? Don't write, write the full legal name, the name that's on that license. That's the name that should go there. We're dealing with contracts. The license number. You should, of course, the company's license number, the address. You will know that. The phone number. You have to put a main phone number. All right. Every contract, and anytime we deal with, well, let's just go on. Licensee, that would be you or me. That would be just our name. Now, if you have multiple, sometimes you may have 2 agents, co-listing agents, then you should put both their information on this form, not just the one. If there are 2 people, they both should be listed on this contract. So if you have a co-listing agent, put that person's name on it also and their information. All right. And of course, your license number, your direct phone number, which would be probably the office number, or if you have a direct extension of the office, most people probably don't these days, your fax number and your email. All right. Buyer. Make sure you list all the buyers who are going to sign this contract. If there are going to be 2 buyers who are signing, who are going to buy this property together, make sure they both sign this document. Make sure you put both their names on it. Don't put one person and have that person sign, because this contract later you may have some issues. Make sure all the buyers who are going to sign that, who are going to buy that property, are listed on this contract and they sign this contract. All right. Of course, the buyer's mailing address, phone number, email, fax number. You always want information how you can contact the buyer if your broker needs to. All right. 13, line 13 says, does a buyer understands that this broker agency contract is between the broker? That, again, that's not the broker of record. That is a company. Okay. Sometimes we use broker interchangeably. Broker means broker record, meaning the person who runs, who's overall the licensees or salespeople in the office, or brokerage, the company, the name of the company. All right. So here, and the reason this is here, I believe, because it lets the buyer know that even if this buyer were to, even if, let's say I'm looking at Kathleen quits. Kathleen, you're at Alphont, right? Where you work? You're at Alphont?
Weichert McCarthy.
Weichert, I'm sorry. I knew it was, okay, right down the street. Okay, Weichert. I'm going to say you've been at Weichert forever. All right, Kathleen's at Weichert. If Kathleen decides to leave Weichert, she cannot take this contract with her. This contract belongs to the broker, the office, the Weichert. That's who owns this contract. So the buyer could, so if you have a contract that's good for 3 months, Kathleen leaves today, you want to go with Kathleen and you want to go sign another buyer broker contract, and you may be responsible for 2 fees. So just let buyers know that this contract belongs to the company, not to the agent. It's the Kathleen or the agent is just signing on behalf of the company. That's one of the reasons I don't believe these contracts should be long. I have never signed a buyer broker contract longer than like 2 months. Most of the time I like 30 days. And here's just food for thought for the new agents. You could sign, I've signed 1 hour buyer broker contracts. Has any experienced agents done that? Like somebody may come into the office and they want to see one house. I say, but they don't want to sign a contract. You say, okay, sign a buyer broker contract for this 118 Main Street in Manioc. That's it. If you buy this house, then I represent you. If you don't buy this house, you're free to go anywhere you want. So that's how you can alleviate some fears of buyers who's like, I don't want to get into a long-term contract. You say, okay, we'll just do it for the weekend. I'm going to show you properties this weekend. If you were to buy a property this weekend, I'm your agent. Outside of this weekend, come Monday morning, you're free to go anywhere. So just think of that. You don't have to have 6-month time. This doesn't have to be a 6-month contract. It could easily be whatever you want. 1 day, 2 days, 1 hour. Make the buyer feel comfortable to sign it. All right. That makes sense to anyone? I wish somebody would speak to me because I just can't see y'all on this screen and I'm having trouble seeing you on my TV. You all are there, right? Can you hear me?
Yeah. Single property. I know some agents that I respect a lot that use single property, you know, single address, buyer agency agreements, very short term. I've never done it myself. I just figure if they only want to use me to open, I mean, this is just my preference. If they only want to use me to turn the key in one house, and then they don't care about me or my business, which is fine. They don't have to, but they only care about going into that house.
But what if,
Okay.
but Mark, what if they want to buy that house?
Well, how
Then you would be
do we know that before we see it? And before we see it, if they don't take my business seriously, then, I mean, all they're going to do is say, well, this, it's just my preference. It's just my choice.
Let me say this, Mark, and I totally understand, and I would agree to a certain degree, but keep in mind, listen, my job is to, and your job, all our jobs are, our job is to find a property for the buyer. Some buyers, would just waste your time. I'm not talking about a buyer who's not serious. I'm not working with a non-serious buyer. And if you're an experienced agent, you learn, trust me, I'm looking at some experienced agents here. They know, Mark, the person who sits with you or you're talking to on the telephone, if they're wasting your time. I give you an example. I remember buyers came into the office years ago and they said, it was a couple, and they said that they had $20,000. They wanted to find a house in the greater Northeast for, what did they say? They had 50,000. They wanted to find a house with 20, and they wanted to be able to put 30,000 to rehab, and then they wanted to be able to sell up about $250,000 to $300,000. So I said to them, well, that sounds nice, but if I were to find that property, I would buy it, and you would never know about it. So,
can I sign up for that, Trent? Will you find that for me, please?
So I'm clearly, and then you educate them and say, listen, that property does not exist. And then you tell them to stay off of the internet and don't watch those late night commercials, because that does not happen. That is not true. And I am not wasting my time with a buyer who thinks that he can spend $20,000 on a house in the greater Northeast, put 30,000 into it, and then turn around and sell it for 250,000. I would love to have that for myself. But let me go back to your point, Mark. If that buyer, a lot of buyers, as you know, don't want to sign contracts. That's the reason for the short term. Some buyers will say, you know what, I would rather not sign a contract. When you say, well, no, I need you to sign something right now, because if I go show you a property and you want to, you eventually buy that property, I want to be the agent I want to be the procuring cause. I want to be paid for my services. So then you just say, and I've done it, I haven't done it a lot, but I would say, let's just sign a buyer agency contract for this one property. And I would say, I've done it maybe 5 times, and 3 times they bought that property, because they were only on property maybe two of the 5 times they actually bought the property. So, but even if they didn't, know what? And if they don't want to work with me, fine. Maybe they don't like me. Not everybody. I mean, everybody likes Trent, but maybe somebody out there in this country doesn't like me.
Excuse me?
Any other comments? Yes.
I have a question. So like if you did the one property thing, would you just make the date of the contract for the day you're going to see the property to outline?
Yes.
Okay.
If we go on
Thank
today, the contract will be good until 11:59 tonight. And
Okay.
at midnight, it expires.
Awesome.
And that would
Thank you.
also cover if you showed 3 houses to those people in one day, or 5 or whatever it is.
And it makes a buyer feel comfortable where they're like, hey, if I don't like Mark, I want to go to Lisa Risco. I hear she's the best agent in town. Then they can do that on Saturday, but they can't go to Lisa today. And so I think that, even if it's a week, If you're going to work with a buyer for a week, just do a 1 week contract. But I just don't like the long term, but that's all a decision. That's a business decision that you make. And maybe you have an office that requires a minimum. Your broker may require a minimum. I don't know, but you listen to your broker and follow what you think is the best method for you, what works best for you. Look at the starting date. I'm sorry, go back to, does the buyer understands that this contract is between the company and the buyer? And 14 says, does the buyer have a buyer agency contract with another broker? Well, if you have an exclusive buyer agency, you should only be working with one company, because exclusive buyer agency says you hire one company to find your property, and no matter who finds you a property, no matter how you get that property to settlement during the term of this contract, the broker earns a commission. So you don't want to have two exclusive buyer agency contracts. So if someone says to you, yes, I have another buyer agency contract, that should be a red flag. You should be saying, well, wait, well, do you understand that if you have another contract and it doesn't end yet, then you are responsible. You may owe a commission to another company. So if I saw that, new agents, that should be a red flag, and you should probably go see your broker, or if you have an attorney in the office. That's a red flag if they have another contract. I would stop and I wouldn't have them sign something. Now, I've had people do this where they say, yes, I have a contract, but the contract expires on Monday morning and I want this to start on Tuesday. Now that's different, because this contract is not going to overlap. One will end and the other one will begin. So that is okay.
I have a question.
Yes.
So what happens if someone has an exclusive buyer agency agreement with another brokerage and they decide they no longer want to work with them and they want to work with you? What do I need?
You need that broker to release them from the contract. This is a contract. They need to be released from it. You can't just say, now, I mean, without going in, because, and Cheryl's on, and Cheryl knows that we do a lot of arbitration and mediation, and you will buyers may get out of these contracts for different reasons. They may argue that you abandoned them, that let's say they want to buy a property and they cannot find you, or you're not returning phone calls, and they really want to put it in an offer. And so they say, hey, I'm going somewhere else because Danielle's not returning my calls and I really want this property. They may be able to argue that you abandoned them, and so they were legit. They had a legitimate reason to go to another agent, but that is not, but again, if there is a contract, if they have a contract, just see your broker and let your broker direct you, to tell you how you should go forward.
Okay,
That's not something I can tell you, because every situation is different. Or I've had buyers who wanted out of a buyer agency contract, and because they said they didn't like the agent, I called the agent said, fine, Trent, I don't want them. They're paying in the rear end, take them. So you may, make a phone call to the agent, and then you may resolve it right there, because the agent says, I'm fine. I'll release them from this. I'll put it in writing, and you be happy, and the best of luck to you, because I don't want to ever see these people again.
Perfect. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Trent, quick question.
Yes.
If you, in the situation where you have a buyer contract for one day, and say you show them 1 or 3 properties, they end up buying that property, but it's 6 months later, do you still have rights to that commission, or is there a specific time frame?
Well,
that
the
can
contract
pass?
says there's a broker, we call a broker protection clause. And if you look at, where is it? We're going to get to it. It's called a broker protection clause. You would determine how long, at 6 months is a long time. I would probably argue that you're going to have problems 6 months later. A week or 2 later, if you were to show a property to a buyer and the contract expired, and you were the person who facilitated everything, you got them pre-approved, you showed them the property, you ran comps, you did everything, and then your contract expired and they go to another office and they write it up, you may be able to argue that you are the procuring cause of that sale, and you would just maybe, if you believe you are entitled to the commission, you would call GPAR and you will get this wonderful woman, Cheryl, and they will set up a arbitration. and arbitration, the professional standards could decide who is entitled to that commission. But again, there is never going to be a right or wrong answer because you have to look at all the facts, and all the facts are different. But 6 months, I would argue, is a long time. 6 days or a week may be a little different.
Okay,
That
thank you.
answer your question?
Trent, I have a question.
Yes.
So with the buyer agency contracts, if you're signed on with a buyer and say you don't like the buyer, perhaps, do you have to have a signed off by both parties before this thing goes away?
I don't think you have to. I think somebody, listen, if you've been in this business a while, there are going to be buyers you don't want to work with. There are going to be buyers that don't work with you. Let's just tell it like it is, okay? There are going to be buyers who are never going to call you back, so you'll never be able to get them to sign anything. I'm a person who believes that you put everything in writing. I'm a person who, if I have a buyer and if that situation, I would send an email to that buyer saying, hey, maybe, we didn't get off the right foot, blah, 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 or you seem like maybe I'm not the right agent for you. I'm happy to step aside so that you are free to go work with someone else. But again, you need to talk to your broker because your broker may not allow that buyer out of the contract. You don't have the right to release somebody from a contract. Your broker does. So if you're releasing anybody out of a contract, first thing you want to do is contact your broker. And I'm sure most brokers will say, if the buyer doesn't want to work with you, and release them. I don't think a broker is going to say keep them. Now, if the broker thinks that this buyer has used you and you spent months with this buyer and this buyer finally found a property that he or she really likes and they just don't want to pay the commission, the broker may say, no. I think they're going to go to another office, write it up, and then avoid paying the commission. So all situations are different, but you can't release a person from contract. Talk to your broker.
So
All right.
there's no specific document, right? There's no termination document for this contract, like the agreement of sale.
No, there's not.
Got it. Okay.
All right. Look at starting and end dates of the buyer agency contract. Basically, even though, if you look at it, says, even though broker's fee or a portion of it may be paid by seller, the listing broker will continue to represent the interests of the buyer. One of the things that I point out, or what I would point out to a buyer, is that I represent you exclusively. I am your agent. I don't represent the seller. Even though the commission may be coming from the seller, I'm looking out for your best interest. We all remember those 6 fiduciary responsibilities that we owe to a client, that obedience and loyalty, disclosure, confidentiality, accounting, and a reasonable degree of care. So I owe you these fiduciary responsibilities. It doesn't matter if Santa Claus were to pay me. I am your agent and I have to look out for your best interest, not the best interest of the seller, not the best interest of me. I can't put my interest above yours because that's what loyalty is. Your interest is above all others, and that is my job. And so sometimes buyers think that if the seller is paying you, somehow you have some allegiance to the seller, and you make it clear my allegiance, my loyalty lies with you and you only. All right. The second one, 1B, this contract applies any property the buyer chooses to purchase during the term of this contract. Buyer will not enter into a buyer agency contract with another broker or licensee that begins before the ending date of this contract. That's what an exclusive right to sell is. You hire one broker to help you find the property, regardless of who gets you the settlement. The brokerage just earned the commission. So you need to let them know, obviously, this is you hiring me and me only, not another company. We're the only company that you're hiring, and I will work with you at least until this contract expires. All right. And so if they choose to go and enter into another contract, they may be responsible for 2 commissions. If they were into another exclusive buyer agency contract, they may have 2 commissions that they owe. So let them know that this is it. Now, listen, and in real life, let's just talk real life. If I have a buyer, I tell all my buyers, if you're not happy with me, I'm ripping this up. That's what I tell every buyer. I'm not going to work with somebody who don't want to work with me. That's just real life. Experienced agents, is that what you would do? You're not going to force a buyer to stay with you when they don't like you. Kathleen, what would you do?
Yeah, sure. Tell them I'll rip it up.
What'd you say?
Agree, yeah.
All right. So for new agents, don't This is not, if they don't want to, if you don't want, they don't want to work with you, talk to your broker. Your broker's going to say, I'll tell any of my agents, let them go. You don't even have to ask me. I tell my agents, if you don't want to work with them, they don't want to work with you, it's fine. Just send an email, just memorialize it in writing. That's all I want, is something in writing. That's all. All right, and put it.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Hi, what do you think about putting it in the additional terms at the end of the contract? Something like this contract can be terminated by either party with written notice.
I'm okay with that. Say, again, talk to your broker. Your broker may not be okay with it. I'm okay with that because, again, only thing I hesitate, because you don't want a buyer, and I think most of my clients I like, but I've had some kind of slick buyers who will use that against you and will find a property, and now that person's daughter just got her license and she wants a daughter to make the sale, and now she terminates it because you told her she can terminate at any point, and then she waits a little bit, and then her daughter writes it up and gets the commission. Maybe you can argue the procuring cost, but I just would be a little hesitant to put that. I'm okay with I tell my clients, listen, if you're not happy with me, take this thing and rip it up. That's all you do. That's what I tell my clients.
Okay.
But you could put that in the contract. Just talk to your broker before you put anything in a contract that you'll ask your broker that question, because he or she may not allow you, or they may be okay with it. All right.
A question.
Yes.
Yeah. So can we alter a contract?
You mean
can we add to a contract?
Yeah, you can, absolutely. Okay. I mean, you're not, unless you're a lawyer, you want to be careful about creating. I mean, that's why the Pennsylvania Association of Realtors has designed this, and lawyers are involved in the design of it, so that we're not lawyers, and we don't want to be drafting documents, because then you could be charged with practicing law. So just limit what you do when changing contracts. I mean, you can cross out something that does not apply. You can add something, but don't make it too complicated. Just simplify it. You don't want to be accused of practicing law. That makes sense to you?
Yes, got you.
All right. Look at the starting date. Starting date. This contract starts when signed by the buyer and the broker, unless otherwise stated here. Like I said, I had a buyer who they worked with me after her exclusive buyer agency ended, and so we started it for the following day. So I didn't start the date that we signed it. So if it's going to start at a later date, put that date. If it's going to start today, you don't have to put anything. Ending date. Now, the end date, the contract ends on this date. And it says may not be extended without the written consent of the buyer. So you can't have any automatic renewals or extensions. The buyer has to agree to extend it if the property is extended. One of the things I would say to agents, I think it's always smarter to have the buyer sign the contract first, and then you, the agent, sign it second, because then you know the date, because dates are important in our business. And let's say if I'm going to send this over to my buyer client today, then I want them to sign it, send it to me, then I sign it, and then I know the date this contract began. Maybe they signed it yesterday, they sent it to me today. So it's easier for you to know the date this contract begins. Maybe they signed it 3 days ago. And if let's say your contract says this contract is good for 30 days. Well, now you have an issue when the 30 days ends, because they say, well, I signed it 3 days. I signed it on the 20th and you signed it on the 23rd. It's best for you to sign a second. And that way you say this contract begins on, let's say, the 23rd of January. So I just think it's better, because dates, you don't want dates when dates only become really, really important when there's an issue. Let's say they become more important when there's an issue. All right. And C, if buyers negotiate and has entered into an agreement to sell, this contract ends upon settlement. So even if you have this contract ends March 31st, and your buyer finds a property that he or she settles on, this contract expires on the date of settlement. The date they go to settlement, this contract is expired. In other words, let's say you have this ends March 31st, your buyer, you all close on the property into January, your buyer finds another property in February. You can't then come back and say, wait, this contract says that I'm entitled to a commission no matter who finds you this property as why this contract is in effect. No, because then that buyer can never buy anything else until this contract expires. If you've already done your job and been paid for, this contract is over. So once this person closes, your contract expires. If they go buy another house tomorrow that you didn't show them, they would not owe a commission. That understood?
Yeah.
All right, broker's fee. Look at broker's fee. Obviously, broker's fees are all what? Negotiable. There is no one can set a fee. No other brokers can't talk to one amongst themselves to set fees, because that's an antitrust violation. That's considered price fixing. So GPAR, Matt can't say starting Monday we're all going to charge 6%. GPAR, or no local association, can set a fee or set a commission. It must be set in-house by your office. Nobody, I as a broker cannot contact another broker to talk about what we should charge property and property management, or what we should give to new agents. And that's why a lot of agents will ask me in my classes, well, what's a good split? I say a good split is whatever you can negotiate. That's a good split. Go out there and negotiate the best you can, but I can't say 20% is good, 80% is bad. So even agents, we should be careful about talking about commissions with people outside of our office. We really should not be doing it. I know everybody does it, but you really ought to be careful about, well, what do they pay you? What's your split? Well, I just think that you guys should be careful, but just back to the point, brokers can set the fees for themselves with no outside consultation. So if buyer, so it says that broker and buyer have negotiated the fee the broker will receive for exercising professional knowledge and skills and locating and assisting buyer in the acquisition of real estate, which is available and suitable for buyer. B, this is what you will be paid. This is how you pay the office. The first one, A, it says in a purchase transaction with a seller represented by a real estate broker. So if you are working with a buyer and you're showing properties to a buyer who has and the seller is represented, and the seller is paying the commission, then you would, with the seller represented by a real estate broker, the fee is blank. Let's say you put whatever you want. Maybe your office is 3%, 2.5. Some offices say we'll take whatever the other office is offering, but it has to be a certain amount. So that, again, that's something we can't talk about. That's something that your broker, your office will tell you, this is our minimum fees. This is what we expect on every transaction. So let's just say it says that the fee, the co-op is offering 2.5%. You okay with it? With the seller represented by a real estate broker, the fee is 2.5% of the purchase price. Or you can have a flat fee. Maybe your office wants a flat fee of $5,000 on 100,000 or less, or whatever. Okay, you can have a flat fee, and then whichever is greater. So you're saying to this buyer, if the seller's offering 2.5%, or the flat fee is 10%, I want whichever is greater. So the 2.5 comes out to be 9%, and the flat fee is 10%. I mean 10,000, and clearly you would have earned, or you would have to pay the difference. The agent would have to pay the buyer the difference. Yes.
Trent, I have a question. I've seen some times where people put 0 for a attractability thing, and then they say, like, oh, buyer doesn't pay commission.
Wait, say that again. Wait, I didn't hear you. They put 0 for what? Say that again.
They put 0 for the buyer's fee because in order to attract them, they say, like, oh, buyers don't pay commission. Don't worry about that. Do you recommend that?
Again, I can't let me just say this again. We can't talk about fees, but I would say you have to do whatever your broker says that you must do.
Because if it's 0 on the buyer agency and then actually you do close the deal,
your office may charge a buyer nothing. That's up to that office. There may be an
Okay.
office that charges every buyer $1,000. It's up to the office. So I can't say what is good and what's bad because every office gets to determine for themselves what they would charge. Because remember, you can't let the market dictate fees because that would be price fixing. I can't say to you, well, my office charges this, and what is your office charge, and what is your, no, you have to decide. So that's a broker question. So you say to your broker, what do the buyers pay? Some brokers will say nothing. Some say we want X number of dollars from every broker, regardless of what the commission is. Make sense?
Yes.
All right, and B, with a seller who is not, now the A is no problem because the seller is going to be paying the commission. You may have to pay, the buyer may pay more. Most companies probably won't make the buyer pay more, but they could. B, with a seller who is not represented by a real estate broker, this is where the buyer is actually paying the fee. So here's the B is more important, I think, because this is a seller's not the seller is unrepresented. Now, unless you can get the seller to pay the fee, with a seller who is not represented by a real estate broker, the fee is blank. So the fee may be, let's say 4% of the purchase price, or a flat fee of, let's say, $10,000, whichever is greater. And you may have another fee like that. And could be some offices charge a conveyancing fee or a broker service fee. So that would be that and. So some brokers, some offices will charge an additional fee to buyers and buyers only. And you'll see those. They may call them a transactional fee, conveyancing fee, broker service fee. But again, that is something that your office will tell you if they have that fee. And 2, broker's fee in event of a lease transaction is. Now, you know what? I want to ask any experienced agent, have you ever filled that out? Any other experienced agents on to tell me that line? I just want to ask you, what line is it? It's 2B2, broker's fee in event of a lease transaction. Anybody ever fill that out?
No.
I bet you nobody's ever done it.
I did. I have. Yeah.
I do it.
Why?
I do.
All right, because you were in my class. That's why you do that.
I have. I do.
I write 1 month.
You know why I would fill that out? Because what happens if you showing this buyer properties, and the buyer don't want the property, but they see a house, and the seller decides, you know what, I'm going to rent the property for $3,000, and the buyer's like, I'm okay with renting it. You should have where is it? Where am I? What line? Broker's fee in the event of a lease transaction is blank. You should be entitled to a fee if that buyer ends up renting that house that you actually showed them, because that could happen. That actually could happen. It's funny that it could happen. I just saw it happen last week. So put something there. What would be my fee if somehow the seller doesn't sell this house, but the buyer decides to rent the house that I showed him? And the only reason the buyer knows about this property is because I showed it to him or her.
What if you're helping a tenant already? Would you just still fill that line in automatically?
Yeah, I would fill out whatever your fee would be. Right.
Okay.
I mean, you may put the lease fee as 1/2 of the first month's rent plus, or 1 month's rent, or whatever your fee would be. Yeah, absolutely. All right. 3. It says if the amount, second line, if the amount received from the listing broker is less than the amount in paragraph 2B1 in the purchase transaction, at least buyer will pay broker the difference unless you all agree otherwise. So in other words, on that 2B1, if the buyer has to pay, if you want 3%, you want at least 10,000 from the seller, and the seller's only offering 9,000, then your buyer would be responsible for that 1,000 unless you all agreed otherwise. All right. And then number 4 would be if there is any non-refundable fee. Some offices, again, it's up to the office, may charge a buyer an upfront fee for their time. Maybe they charge, let's say they charge a $200 of broker's fee is earned and due, and it's at signing his buyer agent's contract, and of course it's non-refundable. Yes, again, it depends on the office. Office can determine that they want to charge a buyer a non-refundable fee. probably most offices don't do that, but they are absolutely within their right to do it. All right, and look at C. And it says the balance of the broker's fee is earned if the buyer enters into agreement of sale during the term of this contract. Again, this is what makes this an exclusive buyer agency contract, whether bought by the broker, the broker's licensee, or salespeople, or by any other person, including the buyer. If the buyer defaults on the terms of an agreement of sale, the broker's fee will be paid to the broker, paid by the buyer to the broker at that time. Buyers advised that can contact a listing broker or sell directly, blah, blah, blah. So you just want to make sure they understand, again, that this is an exclusive right to sell, and that regardless of how you locate that property that you ultimately buy, as long as this contract is in effect, my office is entitled to a commission. All right, and if you go to the second page of D, this is what we mentioned earlier. This is at the procuring cause, or what we call a broker protection clause. If the buyer enters into an agreement of sale after the ending date of this contract, so I find you show a buyer a property today, and the contract ends on Sunday at 11:59, and on Tuesday they go and buy that property because they say, oh, I don't have a contract with you anymore. Well, let's look at it. One says agreement sale is a result of the broker's action during the term of this contract. Well, you were the one who facilitated this transaction. You did everything to get them to buy this, but the contract ended. They waited a day or two, then they just contracted to sell it directly. You would maybe argue that you are the procuring cause, that you facilitated this deal, or you were the chain. You created events that led to this buyer purchasing this property, and therefore you are entitled to a commission. 2 says the property was seen during the term of this contract. You showed it to them. And the third one says the buyer is not under an exclusive buyer agency contract with another broker at the time the buyer enters into an agreement of sale. So if they went on, your contract ends today, but tomorrow they sign another buyer agency contract, then with another office, then you may not be entitled to it.
I have a question.
Yes.
Yes, for example, if an agent never had this buyer's agency contract was being signed, he showed a property, and then a month later, another agent showed the same property, had the buyer's agency contract. Can the first agent claim the procuring cost?
Not simply by having a buyer broker contract. No, buyer broker contract, consumer notice, all the things that you suppose you should have does not mean that you're entitled to the commission automatically. That's why when you go before the professional standards, they will look at all the evidence, but you can't say, let me just say this, having a buyer broker contract is smart, but it's not necessary. It's wise. Now, the Real Estate License and the Registration Act says that you don't have to have a buyer broker contract, but you know what it does say is, in order to be paid, you must have a buyer broker contract. There is a difference. You cannot earn a commission because in order to earn a commission, you have to represent a party, right? So if you say, I'm never going to sign one, then technically you should not, and then someone comes in, well, technically you're not entitled to a commission. Some offices or some agents will wait till they sign an agreement of sale to have the buyer sign the buyer agency contract. And I know I've been guilty of doing that sometimes too. But you must have a buyer broker contract, a buyer agency contract in order to be paid. But you don't have to have that. It's not a legal requirement, but you should have it. It's a smart requirement, but it is a requirement in order for you to get paid. If you did not ever have the buyer sign a buyer agency contract, you really are not entitled to a commission, and your office should not be giving you a commission if you don't have a buyer agency contract.
Okay, so what I'm trying to say is the first one showed the property has no agency buyer's contract, but the second one does have it, and then you went to second.
Right, yes. It does not get the buyer agency contract out for a second. It does not matter.
Okay.
The procuring cause is not contingent on who has a contract. It's contingent on a series of events. You showed the property. You got that person approved. You helped them fix some credit in order to get the pre-approval. You showed them multiple houses. You ran comps for them. You did everything. You did everything, but I mean, you did everything, but now they go to another office or another broker. You could argue, and that broker has a buyer agency contract, you didn't. It would be hard to say, I believe, for the second broker to say, I'm entitled because I wrote it up. Well, I would defer. If I'm the first agent, I would say, yeah, you may have written it up, but I was the procuring cause. And that's where they would come to GPAR and then go before an arbitration, a professional standards committee or arbitration, and that group will decide who is entitled to the commission. But, there's never a white or black. It's never white or black. There's never, you can't just ever say, always this person's entitled, never is this person. The facts, you have to listen to all the facts to determine who's entitled to the commission.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Can I,
dual
Brent,
agency. Yes.
sorry, there was something actually on the previous page at the end, that paragraph 2C, that last sentence, that's something I actually emphasize with any buyer that I'm working with.
And okay, let's go back to it. And I just always I do mention that because it's important. It says that you may have buyers advise that contacting a listing broker or seller directly may compromise broker's ability to earn commission. That is important. And I'm sorry, I haven't highlighted, but I skipped over it. Let me read it again. This is really important. Buyer is advised that contacting a listing broker or seller directly may compromise the broker's ability to earn compensation from a listing broker and could result in the buyer's obligation to pay a fee to the broker. I will, if for any newer agents, make sure you always tell your buyers, and I emphasize this, do not ever contact the seller don't contact the seller, or don't contact the seller's agent. You contact me. I will then in turn contact the agent for the seller, because you may have, and I tell you one time, and I always tell buyers, don't talk to sellers, sellers don't talk to buyers. And I can tell you one time where it was a problem. One time I had a seller, I was selling this big house in East Falls. The seller and the buyer saw one another at Whole Foods. I think I told this story if you were on my last one. They saw each other at Whole Foods, and they decided the buyer wanted to buy the dining room furniture of the seller. They agreed, they wrote something up. And when they came back, I went the day of settlement, I went there and all the furniture's gone except the dining room furniture. And I said, well, why is the dining room furniture here? Seller said, oh, well, the buyer's buying it. And I was like, oh, Lord. And so, but they were waiting on the truck to come pick it up. Well, I remember when I sat down to do the listing contract, there was a big scratch on this table. The furniture was absolutely stunning. I think she said she paid $15,000. She was selling it for like $2,500. It was absolutely beautiful. But there was a scratch on the dining room table. And I remember asking, well, what happened to this? And she said her grandson did something. I don't know what he had, but he scratched the table. So I know it was there. Well, when the buyer's movers came and the buyer came to get the furniture, buyer says, well, what is this big scratch on the table? And the seller said, oh, it was already there. She said, no, it wasn't. Well, I'm not buying this house unless you give me the furniture for free. And she's like, I'm not giving you the furniture. And I had to get it. And they drove off. They drove off. She said, I don't want to buy the house. There's a $600,000 house. And I'm sitting there, and I already counted my commission because I needed to pay some bills. So I'm like, you got to come back. I need to pay my car note. No. And so it took us literally, this was like 9 o'clock in the morning. It took until maybe 4 o'clock to get this resolved. And what I told the seller, you will give her that dining room furniture. It took, she's like, no. I said, you will give her that dining room furniture. This is what you have to do for being stupid. Okay, that's what we call it. It's a stupid fee. Give her the dining room furniture. So you're gonna get $600,000. She owed no money. I think she was walking with $550,000. You're gonna give her that furniture. You the one who decided to go and make an agreement with her. I asked you not to. Did I tell you not to talk? She said, yes. I said, well, good. Then you will. I called her. I said, come pick up the furniture as a gift. All right, and we closed. Don't talk to buyers. Buyers should not talk to sellers. Sellers should not talk to buyers.
I
Yes,
have an even more straightforward example. A buyer decided to talk to the listing agent who was present at the showing, and listing agent was saying, "Oh, this house, I think this house is priced right," and the buyer said, "Yes, yes." That's all they said. Like, "Oh, I heard you." And then when they wrote the offer for less than the list price, the seller or the seller's agent, I don't know, felt like the buyer had lied to them and ended up selling it to somebody else for less money just because they felt insulted. And it was the buyer's fault for just saying yes.
That's actually a good example. And I'm sure anybody that's been in business for more than a week has stories like that, because that's why I don't even want, even when we go to show a property, I hate when sellers are there. I can't control somebody else's client, but my sellers cannot be in the house. I tell my sellers, when they walk in, you walk out. I'd rather you walk out before they even come, and you see them coming, walk around the corner, go next door, run over to the CVS, just do something. Let them have access to the house, full access without you in their way. And because I don't want any conversations. I don't want any conversations. I mean, I remember a time when I was showing a house, I was a buyer's agent, and the seller, well, I can tell you this one if you don't mind. This is worse. This is a story I tell all my clients, not why you should never talk to one another. I had a buyer's, it was a young couple buying their first house. They're going to get married in, I think, like 4 months. They wanted to find a house. We find a house. It was it was a seller's market. We had put in 10, 12 offers, been rejected. They didn't have a whole lot of money, so they needed at least 3% of SIT. Long story short, we find a house. They're in the house. The seller's following us, and they say, "We want this house." I said, "Be quiet. I told you don't say anything. Be quiet." "Oh, we love this." I said, "Shut up, shut up, shut up." And at one point, I threw something at the guy, because he was saying, "Oh my God, this is my dream house. This is perfect." And he said, "What hit me?" I said, "I think it was a bed bug." Now be quiet, because they keep on talking. The seller's it's following behind us. So I told him, I said, "I don't want you to say anything. We'll talk on the outside." So they love it. We get out. I'll never forget this. It was $179,000. This is about 15 years ago. It was $179,000. And they said, "Trent, we know you. We want to offer $185,000 right now." And I said, before we left, the seller kept talking. Now I represent the buyer, I don't represent the seller. The seller kept talking. So she said, "Well, you know what, we really need to sell this house." And I said, "Well, do you have any other offers?" She said, "Well, we've had some offers, but we rejected them all. But I said to my husband, we need to get this house sold because we bought a new house in Delaware in 2 weeks and I can't afford 2 mortgages." I'm like, "Oops, all right, thank you." That's why I don't talk to sellers. Well, that's all I needed. We get outside and I say but they're like, "Trent, we offer all 185. I said, "No, it's not." I said, "If you want 185, go hire another agent, because I like smart clients." We're going back to the offers, and we offered 125. And they're like, "No, we want this house." I said, "We offered 125. There's no offer on the table. I know they're going to counter, so let them counter, and we're willing to go all the way up to 185. Don't worry." We wrote it up. I submitted, and what happened? Anybody know what happened?
Took them 25.
They accepted it.
They accepted it. They took the 125.
But it's a seller's market.
It was a seller's market. The only reason I did that because of what the seller said. That's why I tell that story to all my sellers and say, you don't know what the agent is listening out for. You may be saying something that sounds perfectly innocent, but the agent is processing that, and an agent's going to use that information against you. Don't keep your mouth shut. Do not talk to the buyer or the buyer's agent. And so that's the reason. I mean, when I tell that story, sellers get it then.
I have a question in that scenario. How you said, "Do you have any offers?" Are we allowed to ask the sellers that?
You can ask a seller whatever you want. She was telling me, she actually said she was talking about offers. And I said, "Do you have any right now?" No, because she said, "Well, we've got a few." She told us everything.
So
And
as long
I'm
as it
having-
happens organically is what I'm hearing. It's
I
fine.
didn't go in and ask her, but you can listen. Could you ask a seller if you have offers? Absolutely, you could ask a seller that. I mean, I don't ask sellers that, but if you volunteered all this information, I'm going to have a conversation with you.
God, I'm
And
always weird. I like don't know how to act when they're around. I'm like, I don't even want to say a word to them at all.
And I don't like them there. I don't like them there. And I tell the buyers when you go in, please ignore them. I don't even want them talking to us. And some sellers will literally they'll be breathing on your neck. And it's the worst thing you can do, because a buyer cannot enjoy or appreciate a house and they can't talk freely because the seller is right there, because they may hate the house. And you don't want to insult someone's house. But anyhow, let's go on. Let's look at dual agency, number 3. Dual agency. Everybody knows what dual agent is. Dual agency is when obviously you represent both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. The buyer or the seller is represented by either one agent or 2 agents in the same office. It would be a dual agency situation. So buyer agrees that the broker and the broker's licensees or salespeople stated above may also represent the seller. Some buyers, of course, will tell you no. Some sellers, I would say in all my years, probably about 3 times in my career, I've had a buyer or seller say, no, you cannot be a dual agent. Most of the time they're okay with it, but sometimes they say, especially a buyer, they may feel like your loyalties lie with the seller. Being a dual agent is tough. I don't care what anybody says. I'm in Florida. It's not allowed in a lot of states, including Florida. It is against the law to represent both the buyer and the seller in the same transaction. You can't do it. A lot of states you can't do it. And I suspect at some point in Pennsylvania, we won't do it, because it is, by its nature, is probably a conflict, but it's legal. So designated agency. And number 4, designated agency, you said designated agency is applicable unless checked below. So if your office does not practice designated agency, then you check that box. And basically designated agency, what that means, and I know there are some offices downtown that practice designated agents. I think I see a Keller Williams. I think of Keller Williams. Am I right? Berkshire. Do you all practice designated agency at Berkshire? Is anybody? Keller Williams? I saw somebody from Keller Williams. I believe so. But basically, what designated agency does, or designated agency is a way, I believe, to avoid dual agency. Because if you have if agents are designated, let's say I designate one agent to represent the seller, I designate another agent in the office. It has to be in office. I designate one agent in office to represent the seller. I designate another agent in office to represent the buyer. Then they are not dual agents, and that basically they cannot talk to anyone about their clients except the broker. The broker in that situation is a dual agent, because both designated agencies still work under that brokerage, but all the licensees have no relationship to that buyer or that seller. So if you're a designated agent, then that buyer, no one knows anything about that seller. No one knows in that office other than the broker that seller is willing to take $500,000 when she's already got it listed at $600,000, that she's willing to take $500,000. You can't talk about anything. You can't discuss anything about that seller or anything on that buyer in a designated agency office, and no one has access to the files other than the broker. So if your office does not practice designated agency, you just simply check designated agency is not applicable. Obviously, you will know if your office, they will tell you if they practice designated agency. All right, number 5, brokers services to others. Brokers may not take action that is inconsistent with the buyer's interest. Broker may provide services to a seller for which brokers may accept a fee. So in other words, the broker for the buyer may, well, it tells you, it says such services may include, but not are limited to, listing property for sale, represent the seller as a seller's agent, deed preparation, ordering search, etc. So in other words, if I do something for the seller, I order the city clerk for the seller because they don't know how to do it. And they pay me, we charge a fee for that. That does not mean I represent the seller. I still represent the buyer and the buyer's interest. So sometimes buyers don't want you doing anything for a seller because they think you somehow, again, looking out for the best interest of the seller and not their best interest. In that situation, I would not do anything for a seller because I know the effect it may have on my buyer. I would not do anything for a seller unless I'm representing that seller and I'm a dual agent. All right. And the B is, I think, one that buyers, and tell me if I'm wrong, but buyers don't understand this. You make sure you stress this to buyers. The broker licensee may show the same property to other buyers and may represent those buyers that attempts to purchase the same property that the buyer wishes to purchase. That is one that, am I right? Anybody on buyers think that when you show them a property, you should not show it to another one of your clients. They think that somehow once you show that property to them, you should not be writing up another offer for another client. Sometimes I've had once, I think 4 or 5 buyers who want the same property. I wrote up maybe 4 or 5 agreements at the same time for 4 or 5 different people. One has nothing to do with the other. And so you have to explain to a buyer, even if I'm showing, I may still show other people the same property that you're interested in, and I may write up an offer on that, but I can't tell you what that person's offering. Now I know you say I'm going to offer 200,000 or this 250,000 on the property, and this person's offering 240. Well, I already know you're not going to get it, but I'm not going to tell you. I can't say, well, I know you won't get it because I have another client. I'm writing up an offer for 240. But just let them know that you can show the same property to other buyers who you represent and write up offers.
Do we have the obligation to tell them when we are showing someone else the same property and planning on writing up another offer?
No, I would just tell them when I go over the contract. This is what I do. This is one of the things, because I'm not going through every paragraph of them. I'm just summing it up. But one thing I do mention is that you understand, Mr. or Mrs. Buyer, that I can show that same property to other buyer clients. Because sometimes, say that again. Someone just said something. Because sometimes they think that you cannot do that. So am I right? I mean, does any other body who's been in business a while, if you experience that?
Yes, ask a question. I have.
Go on. Who said they did? They have. Could you say?
I have.
Elaborate on that.
Yes, I have experienced that. And I had highlighted it to them during our buyer consultation, but of course they didn't remember. So I had to refer back to it so that they could see it's within my rights to do that and what my responsibilities were towards them.
All right. Someone else.
Ask a question about that.
Yes.
So this kind of happened to me before, but so I just feel like I understand what you're saying, but I feel like I'm confused because I just feel like if we're supposed to advise our clients and we know that we have another client who's offering more for that same property and their chances are slim because of it, why wouldn't we be allowed to, just advise them and say, hey, you may want to reconsider what you're offering, because we know it's like literally you're wasting your time at that point if you're not being honest with them and you're writing up this offer.
You're being honest. No. All right, I'll give you one word answer. Confidentiality. That's the answer. You have to be, what your buyers tell you is confidential. Remember, again, those 6 fiduciary responsibilities. I call them an old car. O is for obedience. You owe an old car to all your clients, obedience. Loyalty for L. D is disclosure. C is confidentiality. A is accounting. And R is a reasonable degree of care. I tell people that you owe a client an old car. You don't owe a customer an old car. So once you sign a buyer agency contract and that buyer becomes a client, you owe them an old car. That means you owe them confidentiality. So if your client is offering 200,000 and another client is offering 240, you cannot discuss what one client is offering to any. You shouldn't be discussing that with anybody other than the broker for the seller or the agent for the seller. Does that make sense, Shia?
Yes, it does.
Even though you know they're not going to get it. Yeah, but
right.
have you not written up things before where you know the buyer's not going to get it? I've called agents before and said, hey, you have offers. They say, hey, Trent, the seller's taken, the seller wants around 300,000. Sometimes sellers almost give you the answer. And I go back to the buyer and say, hey, I'm told that you probably got a good chance of getting it if you offer 3. Oh no, I want 275. Okay, then they offer 275 and someone offers 280 and they don't get it. But I'm telling you what you need to do to get it. So even though that happens, so you know you're kind of wasting your time because it's a lot lower than what the seller's going to take.
But can this
you-
come back to bite us, you know, in the, you know what, in the end? Like, I know a lot of buyers that will look to see what agencies, if like a home was sold in-house, or they'll try to see what agent sold the last house. So if they now see that we actually helped someone else buy a house that we also put an offer in without telling them that we were doing that, can't they take that as if we were being dishonest?
No, because that's why you tell them, you go over that you tell them that I can show the same house to other clients. That's why you do that. And that's why I think a lot of agents will go skip by that one because that could be important. But no, it can't come back on to, because you have every right to work with as many clients as you want. And you don't owe an out, and you could not, you could lose your license, or you could be reprimanded for discussing or breaching the confidentiality of one client in favor of another. You don't, whatever your clients tell you, whether it's a buyer or the seller, that information is confidential until you die. Okay.
Okay, thanks.
All right, until you die. And when you die, if you go to heaven, don't even discuss it there. All right, C, 5C. Obviously, if you have a conflict of interest, you have to disclose it. If I'm going to buy this house that I have listed for sale, or my corporation or my LLC is going to buy it, I need to disclose that. Anytime you buy or sell real estate as a licensee, you must disclose that you're a licensee. All right. 6, the entire contract. This contract is the entire agreement. This is kind of important to me because you can't have side agreements. Everything is within the confines of this document. Whatever you want needs to be here. You can put an additional terms. Don't say, remember we talked about that? No, write it down. And this is a written contract. Anytime you amend a written document, it should be amended in written form. If you had an oral contract, which I'm not even going to talk about, we don't do oral agreements in real estate. So it says this contract is the entire agreement between the buyer and the broker. Any verbal or written agreements that were made before are not a part of this contract. All changes to this contract must be in writing and signed by the buyer and the broker. Make sure if you make any changes. Oh, by the way, if you wanted to make a change, there is a form called I don't know if you're familiar, change to the buyer agency contract. You don't see that? That's in our list, in our zip form. So if you are making a change to this document, use this, called the change to the buyer agency contract. So let's say you want to change the date. You wanted to make any kind of additions or any changes. Don't just use this. Just get the changes to the buyer agency contract. All right. Paragraph 7. I want to spend a lot of time. If your broker goes out of business or transfers this contract, he or she could transfer this contract to another office. They just need to notify you in writing. You can object. So I could say, okay, I stopped doing business. I'm transferring all my business to Compass or to Weicker or to Remax. Then I just need to inform you, the buyer that your contract, your agreement is not with me and Remax, is now with Weicker or with Compass or with Berkshire or with someone else. Okay. 8, confidentiality. Look, there's confidentiality we just talked about. Confidentiality, unless permitted by the buyer. This is another one that I think is important. This is one that I think comes up more, it's come up a lot in my career. Unless permitted by buyer or required by law, broker will not knowingly reveal or use any confidential information of buyer. All right, Gia, you see that? Because that's confidential. Whatever the buyer, your client decides to offer, that is confidential. All right, and you have to treat it as confidential. All right. Yes. Buyer understands, and here's what I think is the key here. Buyer understands a seller's might not treat the existence, the terms or conditions of any offer as confidential unless there is a confidentiality agreement. In other words, tell buyers that when they make an offer, their offer is not confidential. If I submit an offer on behalf of my client for 300, that seller can tell any other broker that I have a $300,000 offer. Does everybody understand that? The buyer's offer is confidential. I can't discuss what the offer is with anyone other than the broker for the seller, but the seller or the seller's agent can tell anybody they want who submits an offer. I have 3 offers. I have a $300,000 from Kathleen. I have a $280,000 property offer from Mark, and I have a $290,000 cash offer from Drew. Absolutely can say that. I wouldn't do that. I would simply say, I have multiple offers, submit. I'm gonna give everybody an opportunity to bring their best and final offer. I would never tell somebody. What I tell people is this: if I have at least one full price offer and you call me and ask, do you have offers? You know, if you ask if there are offers, you must tell them where those offers come from. You all understand that. That is your obligation. You must say to them, if you have offers, you must tell the truth, one. So you have to say, yes, I have offers. You don't have to say how many. You have to say, yes, I have offers. And you have to tell that buyer's agent where those offers come from. You would say, hey, I have 3 offers from co-ops, but 1 offer is in-house, or one of the offers is from me. You have to disclose that to buyer's agents when they ask. All right, does everybody understand that? You have to disclose. When they ask you if there are offers, you have to tell them the truth. And if there are, yeah, there are offers. You now need, the next step is to say where those offers originate. I have 4 offers, all from co-ops. That's what you should say. Or I have 3 offers from co-ops, 1 offer from an in-house agent. That way they kind of know. All right. Any questions? But let them know that they're just because, now I've had clients who did not want people to know that they're buying this property. Sometimes you may deal with somebody who's well known and they want to have a confidentiality agreement where it says to the seller, you can't discuss with anyone the name of the person submitting this offer. And in order for you to submit it, the seller has to agree to it. And if the seller won't agree to it, we won't submit the offer. So sometimes maybe a celebrity or some well-known person don't want people, they don't want it to get out to the community or out to the press that they're buying a house in Villanova. Or maybe someone's going through the divorce, a high-profile person going through the divorce, and they don't want it. So I mean, but that's kind of unusual. But just know that your offer is not confidentiality unless you have some type of confidentiality agreement with that broker for the seller. And I'm telling you, I wouldn't sign that if I'm the seller's agent. I mean, the seller. Any questions? Number 9, expertise of real estate agents. Pennsylvania real estate agents are required to be licensed by the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania and are obligated to disclose adverse factors about a property that are reasonably apparent to someone with expertise in the market of real property. Remember, you are considered real estate is your expertise, but science and law is not. So when someone's asking you anything that's beyond your or outside your area of expertise, then you send them to professionals. All right. If you're showing a commercial property and they're asking about the soil, do you think that if the soil is good, or do you think they're in the underground storage tanks? You say, we will hire a professional. I'm not, that is beyond my area of expertise. All right. If someone's asking you a legal matter, or they're saying, is it best, how should I take title? I'm in a relationship, but I'm not married. Should we take title? Should we take it as tenants in common? Should we take it as joint? That's when you say you can contact a lawyer, or you can basically give them to title company. Title company can handle, but don't you tell them how to take title, because that could be construed as practice in law. Don't tell somebody how to take title. To always direct them to a person who can tell you that. And it says B, if 9B, it says the buyer wants financial, legal, any other advice, buyer is encouraged to seek the services of an accountant, a lawyer, or other appropriate professional. 10, deposit money. Brokers will keep all deposit monies that the licensee or the broker receives in an escrow account as required by the real estate licensing laws. We all know that. Now, go to the next one, which people always ask. Look at that first line on page 3. It says buyers and sellers may name a non-licensee as an escrow holder. Who would be a non-licensed escrowee? I mean, escrow holder. Who would
Title
that be?
company, law
Title.
firm.
Title, there you go. Title company, a law firm. Yes, S. Mason, law firm, title company, good. So a title company, here's what you need to remember when a title company is holding escrow and not the broker. The title company is not bound by the Real Estate Licensing and Registration Act. Brokers are. So if you have a title company holding escrow, title company may decide who gets that money if there is a breach. Well, if I'm the broker holding it, I cannot distribute that money. I don't know what the title company or what a lawyer may do, what a law firm may do. So you just need to be mindful that the title company and lawyer are not bound by the same laws that bind real estate brokers. Just keep that in mind. And if you see that, look at it, says the buyers and sellers may name a non-licensee as escrow holder, in which case the escrow holder will be bound by the terms of the escrow agreement, not by the Real Estate License and Registration Act. They've been bound by whatever agreement you all have, but they may be liberal with it. They may, I don't know, but just keep that in mind. It's always better, in my opinion, to have a broker hold it than to have a title company or a lawyer hold it. That's just my opinion. B, regardless of the apparent entitlement to deposit monies, Pennsylvania law does not allow them. See, this is what the brokers are bound by. Brokers can't just decide who is entitled to the commission. A lawyer might, a title company might, they're not bound by the Real Estate License and Registration Act. So regardless of the apparent entitlement to deposit money, Pennsylvania law does not allow a broker holding deposit monies to determine who is entitled to the deposit monies when settlement does not occur. Broker can only release these monies if if a written agreement is signed by both parties. So if the buyer and the seller say release the money to the buyer, then the broker can do it because they have an agreement signed by both parties. 2, if the broker receives a written agreement that is signed by the buyer and the seller directing how the broker is to distribute the money. So in other words, again, buyer and broker could have the buyer and the seller, I'm sorry, could have an agreement that says, okay, yeah, I may have breached it, so you can keep 75%, but give me back 25%. They could agree with that. Well, they're the broker because it's signed off by the buyer and the seller. Broker then has to give 75% to this party and 25%. But without an agreement, the broker can only do one thing, and that's hold on to that money. That broker cannot determine who's right and who's wrong, even if it's obvious who's right and who's wrong. Broker just has to keep it in his or her escrow account. And the third one, according to the terms of a final order of court. So if someone went to court, judge says that the seller is entitled to the escrow money, then you as a broker then could turn that money over to the seller. Fourth, according to the terms of a prior written, and this is important, y'all. This is an important one. According to the terms of a prior written agreement between the buyer and the seller that directs the broker how to distribute the deposit monies if there is a dispute between the parties that is not resolved. In other words, anybody know where that is in agreement sale? I want you to write down 26 and go back and look at it. I read it. 26C in the agreement sale, paragraph, familiarize yourself with paragraph 26C. 26C. And let me read 26C to you. It's on page 12 of agreement sale. It says buyer and the seller agree that if there is a dispute over the entitlement to deposit monies that is unresolved within blank days, it has 180 days here if it's blank. Do not leave 180 days in there. put 30 days, put 15, put whatever you want. Don't leave 6 months. Let's just say 30 days, okay? Let's read it with 30 days. Buyer and the seller agree that there is a dispute over the entitlement to deposit monies that is unresolved 30 days after the settlement date or following termination of the agreement, then the broker holding the deposit monies will, within 30 days of receipt of a buyer's written request, distribute the deposit monies to the buyer unless the broker is in receipt of verifiable written notice that the dispute is a subject of litigation or mediation. In other words, if even the buyer is wrong, the buyer breached the contract, if the seller did not initiate litigation or mediation, and that buyer asked for his or her deposit money back, the broker must, according to this agreement of sale, the broker must turn that money over to the buyer, even if the buyer is wrong, within 30 days of that receipt. So the buyer breaches the contract. Buyer says, I want my $10,000 back. Buyer sends a letter to the broker and says, return my earnest money deposit. Broker has to look to see if there's a mediation, no mediation. Is there a lawsuit, no litigation. And then within 30 days, that broker must return this money to the buyer. Any questions?
Is there a formal request for the deposit money, or can it be as simple as an email?
I've got emails. I think it could be an email. I've got
Okay.
emails. And I know because I teach, I always know when someone's requesting because they don't know about this. That means they were in a class or a seminar of mine because they say, well, a couple of people say, Trent, I only learned about this from you. Send us our money back. I'm like, it does not. If I got a request from this buyer, I don't care if it's an email, it's a request. I'll tell my seller, hey, I have to turn this money off. You haven't, at this point, you haven't filed a litigation. You haven't filed mediation. Now, I also tell I would tell sellers up front that, you're not just entitled to the money, even the buyer breaches. So you kind of need to explain this to them. But let me go to the end of this paragraph because there's one line that's also important. Very end of this paragraph says, buyer and seller agree that the distribution of deposit monies based upon the passage of time does not legally determine entitlement to deposit monies, and that the parties maintain their legal rights to pursue litigation even after a distribution is made. So if the broker gives that money to the buyer, that seller can still come back and sue to try to get it back. But let me just tell you, real life, nobody's going to sue after they ain't done nothing and it's $1,000 deposit or $2,000. It'd be more costly for the seller to try to get that money back than to just let it go. But anytime I return money, I've never had a seller say, I'm going to sue. No, they won't.
Trent, quick question. If it's within the 30 days and the buyer sends a note in saying, I want my money back, and say it's day 15 of 30, could the seller then start litigation and then the brokerage has to wait till 15 more days before they give the money back?
They haven't already done it. This says that they haven't initiated it. So they could do it the day after, but I would have already given the money back. Once you
got it. So if day two, the buyer.
You mean you mean if they do it between the time I submitted? Yes, I would say yes. Then you would just say the seller has initiated mediation or litigation. Yes, then I wouldn't return it. Right, I see what you're saying. Because the broker has 30 days to give the money back. So if I get a letter today and then tomorrow I get a seller says, I've hired a lawyer, we're suing for the deposit, then I'm not returning. I'll just say, nope, it has to stay in escrow, and then a fact finder, someone else has to tell me what to do. At that point, I would not, no.
So there might be a benefit of sending it on day 29, so it doesn't give the seller enough time to create.
Oh, that's devious. But that's exactly what I do.
I would recommend, in this case, I would recommend day 30.
Yeah, I think so. Yeah.
I would do it on day, or just put 15 days in there. But it is smart. Don't give them too much time. Don't send it on the first day because then they're gonna go and file something.
All right. Thank you.
You're welcome. You're a devious. Goodness, smart. Hey, I love a smart agent.
Hey, Trent,
Yes.
this is Cheryl. Listen, I think I need to chime in here with this. So this would be called a dispute resolution mediation. Okay, if the buyer and the seller are in disagreement as to who gets that deposit monies, as per the agreement of sale, you have to go through the mediation process, which is you would contact me. If the mediation, the buyer and sellers go to mediation and there was no agreement, then they're free to go to litigation. If they were to go to litigation first, they're going to send them back to us if the property is located in Philadelphia County. You have to file wherever the property is physically located. So just wanted to share that.
Thank you, Cheryl. And by the way, if you don't know Cheryl, she's the best you will ever encounter. She knows more than anybody on the face of this earth. So if you have any questions about mediation, arbitration, call Cheryl. And she just redid her kitchen and spent $200,000. So I'm waiting for the pictures.
Hey, Cheryl, it's Walt Goodman. How you doing?
I'm good. Thanks, Walt.
All right, where are we? Civil rights. Oh, no, go to C. I'm sorry, B, C. 10C, I think is also important. Sometimes buyers get mad. They don't get their deposit monies. They blame you. And what do they say? I gave it to you. I gave it to Danielle. I gave it to Drew. I gave it to Ernest. I gave you my deposit. You need to give me my deposit back. Well, look at this. You want to make sure buyers understand C. Buyer agrees that a buyer names broker or the broker's licensees in litigation regarding deposit monies, the attorney's fees and the cost of the brokers and licensees will be paid by the buyer. So you need to let buyers know if there is a dispute, you cannot name me in the lawsuit. You can't name my office. Otherwise, if we have to defend this, you have to pay the attorney's fees, because the only thing the broker is doing is holding it. Basically, when there's a dispute, just think of it becomes a freeze. That money I as a broker, I'm just now an escrow agent. I cannot determine who gets the money without someone telling me who get it. The buyer and seller could agree, a court could tell me, a board could tell me, but a panel could, but I can't decide, oh, I think the buyer is right here, so I'm gonna give the money to the buyer. No, all I can do is hold that money in escrow. And if I don't, and then the buyer gets angry because I can't distribute it, even if the seller's wrong, then you file a lawsuit and include me, then you have to pay my attorney's fees. All right, civil rights, paragraph 11. Civil rights, obviously, we know in this business and nowhere should you be discriminating against people based on any of these things. So we don't discriminate, and there are federal and state laws make it illegal for a seller, a broker, anyone to use race, color, religion, religious creed, sex, disability, familial status, age, national origin, use of handling, training of support animals as reasons for refusing to sell, show, or rent properties, loan money, set deposit amounts, or as reason for any decision related to the sale of rental property. If you have, and if you've been in this business a while, you will have agents, you will have sellers who will discriminate. They will tell you, they'll say, I don't want children. That's discrimination. That's against the law. All right. You tell them, no, I cannot be involved. That is a violation of fair housing. If you have a seller who says, I don't want Black people here, I don't want Latinos here, I only want Muslims, I just want a Christian, I don't want, anytime someone brings up any one of these protected classes, you need to tell them this is a violation of fair housing. Both on the federal levels and then on the state level, there are laws on the city level, and we don't discriminate. So sometimes, and I always use the example of children, because that's what people will tell me, don't put children. We do a lot of property management, and someone will say, oh, don't put children on the second floor because the man down on the first floor probably moved. Well, you have to tell them, I cannot do that. That's a violation of fair housing. That's what familiar status is. Familiar status is if you discriminate against families with children under 18. I could say your 19-year-old son can't live here, but I can't say your 17-year-old son can't live here. I absolutely can tell you, because your 19-year-old is an adult, your 17-year-old is a minor, and when actually Philadelphia is under 21, but on a federal level, 18. You have children under 18. They are protected. And if you discriminate against them, you violate the Federal Fair Housing Act. So you want to make sure, and just keep in mind, if you discriminate or you have clients who discriminate with your blessing, you go to prison with them. I think they put you in the same cell. Did someone have a comment? So don't do it. All right, don't do it. There's no commission worth your freedom. There's no commission worth somebody coming to you, putting you in handcuffs, carting you off the federal prison because you decided you didn't want someone in this protected class to get this property. There is never, and it will happen. It will happen. Trust me, it happens. So don't be involved in it. When you hear it, educate the clients. If they still insist on it, get your stuff, walk away. And I would tell your broker and be guided by your broker. Any questions? No questions. Did I scare y'all? What the? Don't discriminate. All right. 12, notice regarding convicted sex offenders. Megan's Law, that just tells them that if you, that there is a law that is a community notification of sex offenders. And if you want, if someone asks you, let me ask you a question. What happens if someone asks you, are there any, can you check to see if there are any sex offenders living on this block? Because I have 2 young daughters and I don't want any sex offenders around. What would you do as the agent? Reverend Louise, you want to say something? Let's see. Who wants to say that? What would you say? Somebody answer that. You're the agent. Someone says, are there sex offenders? Can you check to see if there are any sex offenders in this neighborhood?
They need to do that on their own. That's their diligence.
Okay. All right. Drew, thank you. You would never, under no circumstances, would you then get on the website and check for sex offenders. What happens if you check and you miss the one that lives next door and that sex offender attacks that woman's young daughter? She's gonna say, well, my agent told me there's no sex offenders living here and I wouldn't have bought the house. Tell them they can go to the website. You see it under paragraph 12, last line. If they have any questions, tell them they can either go to Pennsylvania State Police or they can simply go on the website, www.meganslaw.state.pa.us. You can go on the website, send them to the website. Do not ever look it up for them, because if you make a mistake, you now assume liability. Send them to the website. You're not looking up sex offenders. That's not your job. You sell real estate. All right. Let me ask another one. If you ask, what if your clients ask if a neighborhood was safe, is safe? What would you say? You're in, let's say, University City, a couple's trying to buy a property for their son who's in his sophomore year at Drexel, and you show them properties and they say, is this safe? Is this a safe neighborhood? Because I only want my son in a safe neighborhood. What do you say to that?
I tell them that there's websites out there that show all the activity and feel it out for yourself compared to what you live in.
Okay. Okay. Don't answer. Don't say to them, oh, this is really safe. Oh, I've known this neighborhood for years. This is really safe. You say to them, you can call the police department. You can go on the website and look up crime statistics. You can go to NAPE. You can do whatever. But I even give you the number to the police district. But I cannot tell you whether the neighborhood is safe or not safe. And keep in mind, what's safe for you may not be safe for me. Some people may hear gunshots every night and they're okay with it. Other people may not be okay with it ever. So what's safe for one person may not be safe for another person. And one of the things, and I'm just, what time? Oh, I can't tell this story. Anyhow, I want to tell a quick story.
Something that I've said before is I've only ever been held up twice and it wasn't in this neighborhood, but then I'm usually not in this neighborhood, so I don't know. I
would simply tell them, Mark, check crime statistics, call the police department,
Sure.
Go to the website, most neighborhoods have a local community paper that will publish the crime, what's going on in that neighborhood, crime-wise. you tell them you have to do your own investigation, your due diligence, because again, you don't want to be telling someone a neighborhood, say they buy the house, they get mugged that night, they come back and they sue Mark and his company because Mark said, put them in an unsafe neighborhood. Mark said it was safe. I got mugged, therefore it's not safe. I want out of here. Mark, I want you to pay. Don't bring on liability. Don't put yourself in a position where you become liable. No, you want to know if there's sex offenders, check the website. If you want to know if there's crime in the neighborhood, I want you to check the website, call the police. I'm not again, remember we talked about you're operating outside of your area of expertise. I'm not in law enforcement. I don't know the crime statistics here. Okay.
Can I say something about the age when you, especially when I show tenants about the apartment?
Yeah.
First of all, I usually ask, do you have any children? Is it okay? That's number one. Okay, I am I'm showing an apartment to the prospectus tenants. Okay, I will always ask, do you have any children? That's number one.
Why do you ask that? Why do you ask
because that if they do have children, I need to find out the next question is what age?
Right,
because in Philadelphia, I'm sorry, because in Philadelphia, if there's, I think it's round about, if the child is round about 7 or 8.
No, under 7.
Under 7,
but you know,
seller has to do a lead test. Oh.
But you know, as of now, every landlord has to do a lead test.
Oh.
Now they're phasing it in. So right now, as of October, now they're doing it by zip codes. So eventually, every landlord, if you're a landlord in Philadelphia, you have to do the lead test, whether you are rented to children under 7 or not. That became the law as of, I think it went into effect October 1st of last year, and they're still phasing it in. So you don't have to ask if they have children now for that reason. That's why I was asking, why do you ask if they have children? Now, it doesn't matter. If you're a landlord, you have to do the lead test. The property has to be lead free and lead safe. If you're a landlord.
But in Center City, we're not phasing up. I mean, I think it gets into 2021.
Right. I think Center City is the last one, I believe. Center City is last. Yeah.
So I still have to ask the question, okay, right?
You need to know if they're children under 7, because then they have to because until they phase in, until the whole city's done, I would agree.
Okay, thank you.
I would agree. All right, look at paragraph 13, buyer inspections. Keep in mind, you need to tell a buyer that they are buying, unless the buyer and the seller agree otherwise, the real estate is sold in its present condition, as is. You're buying a property in its as is condition unless you all agree to do repairs. But the default position is as is position. It is the buyer's responsibility to determine whether the condition of the property is satisfactory. Buyer's advised to carry out an inspection at buyer's expense by qualified professionals, determine the condition of the property. So you obviously, now, I have a policy in my office where unless the person has some kind of specialized knowledge, like they're a contractor or something, they must get a home inspection, unless they buy like a shell. If you buy the property and you won't get a home inspection, well, I had to change it a little bit, but for the most part, I think I had to deviate. We would not represent you if you were buying a property without a home inspection. And I'm talking about people who are not buying it because they can't afford the home inspection. I'm not talking about somebody who is trying to get a property they really want. They took somebody in, they know what it is, they have the money to make a repair. I'm talking about a first-time home buyer who is saying to me or saying to us, listen, we don't have a whole lot of money saved. The home inspection may cost us the home inspection may cost us $600. We're going to forego that. We will say to you, or I would say to you, then I'm not going to represent you unless you get that home inspection. Don't waive a home inspection because you can't afford it. Go borrow the money, go find the money, do something, because home inspections are vital, especially for folks who have limited money. I've seen people buy properties without a home inspection. The house looks great, heater breaks, there's no warranty. Now they need to put a new heater, it's going to cost them $5,000 and they don't have it. And it's the middle of winter. It's Philadelphia right now, and y'all said it's cold. I'm in Florida, so if it broke here, it'd be okay. But because it's gonna be 80 today and 85 tomorrow and Sunday and Monday. But I digress. So so make sure you get a home inspection. If you, I mean, I shouldn't tell you don't. I don't even know what I just said. All right, go on to the. B talked about the investigate the accuracy. Make sure you understand as the agent, as a buyer, make sure what you see in MLS is verified. Don't take anybody's word for anything. You need to verify everything. If it says that this property is a triplex and is zoned as a triplex, you need to verify that. Maybe it's only zoned as a duplex, it's being used as a triplex, and now you're gonna have an issue with the financing. Whatever someone puts in, we just put in a new roof 3 years ago. Okay, fine. I'm not taking you at the word. Give me proof. Give me something. You must have a home. You must have a warranty. Give me proof that you put in a new roof. Don't take the word of the seller. Don't take the word of the seller's agent. Don't take the word of what's in MLS, because sometimes MLS is wrong. You need to verify everything that's in MLS. Don't just take the word from people. That makes sense? Because you don't want to, because you can find yourself saying, oh, well, MLS said they put in they put in a new roof 2 years ago. Well, they meant to put in a new roof 2 years ago, but they never got around to it. So now the roof is 40 years old and it's leaking and it needs a new roof, but you took them at their word and you never got a copy of roof cert. And even if you get the roof cert, call the roofer, verify that they put a roof at that location, and don't just take people at the word. I don't know if you've been in this business a long time, somebody can go on the computer and create a roof search. I've seen that happen. I've seen people create plumbing search, electrical search, verify that stuff. Get on the phone call. Am I right, Kathleen?
We know who she is.
Oh my God. You didn't even have to use gender. All right, you could say, I know who it is. There are people out there who will do that. Kathleen knows exactly who I'm thinking of, but there are a couple people. They will give you worthless pieces of paper. If I get a roof cert, call and ask questions, verify, even, ask a seller to show me proof. Well, I wouldn't probably go that far, but once you call people, now the phone's disconnected. Well, do you think that roof cert's any good if the phone is disconnected and the roofer's out of business? No. So if they need to be coded or if there's an issue, what do? You have to get a new roofer. So just be mindful of that. That's all I'm saying. All right, look at, yes.
Sorry, at the last sentence of 13B, the language is that unless otherwise noted, the broker has not verified the accuracy of this information and the buyer is advised to investigate its accuracy. So of course, I agree it's good practice for agents to verify everything, but in the occasion that the buyer may accuse you of not having done your due diligence, is this something worth noting?
You can tell the buyer. Well, I think it's your job as an agent to get a roof cert to make sure it's real before you give it to your client. I wouldn't get a roof cert and say to my client, hey, you verify this. I mean, they wouldn't even know what to do with it. So yeah, I think what this is saying, and what I would say is that you say to a buyer, let's say, I got a great example. Years ago, and I don't have time to tell the story because we run out of time. Let's say you want to be, and this is, you going out to Abington to be, and you want to put your kids in Abington School District. There was Copper Beach. This was a real story. But anyhow, the MLS had the wrong elementary school. The elementary school that they listed was a Blue Ribbon Elementary School, and there was another one there that was not a Blue Ribbon, but they put the wrong one, and the agent didn't verify it. And when they got the settlement, they learned that she moved out there specifically to put her two boys in that Blue Ribbon school. And when she got the settlement, the seller, she says, well, I'm going to be, calling the school district and register. And she said, oh, no, wrong school. They go to the other elementary school. This buyer walked out of settlement and sued her client. They sued the buyer and the seller's agent. Somebody should have done. Now, you could have said to the seller, I mean, the buyer, hey, you need to verify that this is the right school district. Absolutely. I would have probably done it, but I would have also said to my client, hey, because we know that you're only going out there to send your kids in a certain school district, let's make sure that this is correct. I want you to check, and I will check too. Because if you know, so you need to verify, but it should be on the, it really is the responsibility of the buyer, but as the agent, you should be there to assist them. Would you agree with that? Maybe not. All right, let's look at 14, recordings on the property. Any person who intentionally intercepts oral communications by electronic or other means without the consent of all parties is guilty of a felony under Pennsylvania law. Buyers should not make recordings on the property to capture the oral statements of other persons without having the full consent of all parties who are parties to the communication. So you should not have your buyers recording anything in a house. Tell them, nowadays, of course, everybody records everything. They should not be recorded in someone's house. This is someone's house. I don't even like them. I will not allow my clients to take pictures because I don't know what's going to be in that picture. I'm like, no, you can't take pictures unless we get permission from the seller. Do not take pictures of this house. Now, for the vacant property, may be a little different, but if people living there, I generally say no, unless I'll call the agent, ask the agent if the seller minds, we take some pictures, but I just usually say no unless I get permission. But generally, like it's okay. Also, I'd rather have somebody else who wants to see the property come back. I don't really want you taking pictures of a property that someone lives in for security reasons, for safety reasons. I don't know why you're taking, this is someone's house. I would not want you taking pictures in my house. Now you know where the doors are, you know where the windows, I just think just safety reasons only. All right, maybe you're there to look for a house, maybe you're there to case it. Okay. All right, and then B says the buyer should be aware that a seller's property may contain smart home technologies or devices which may record or allow for remote monitoring of the seller's property, including broadcasting or recording video and audio. Buyers should be aware that any discussions, including discussions of negotiation strategies held on the property, may not be confidential. So keep in mind, tell your buyers, be mindful that you may be recorded in someone's house. They have the right to record any. They have the right to video you in their house. I believe in these days, it's best to just save your negotiations for outside. I just would just say, I don't know what devices people have in their houses. I tell buyers, let's look at the property and let's discuss, let's negotiate outside of the house. All right. Look at 15, recovery fund. We all know about the recovery fund. Pennsylvania has a recovery fund. To repay any person who has received the final court ruling, a civil judgment against the Pennsylvania real estate licensee because of fraud, misrepresentation, deceit in a real estate transaction. So if you defraud one of your clients, they have the right to once they get a judgment against you, they have a right to, if they can't collect from you, they have the right to come to the real estate recovery fund and collect up to $20,000 per person. And the real estate recovery fund would pay out to up to $100,000 per licensee. If anyone paid, if the recovery fund has to pay any money out on your behalf, your license is immediately suspended until you repay all the money they paid out on your behalf plus 10% interest. All right. And then special clauses 16. One thing that if you did want to, I went to mention this, if you didn't want to be a dual agent, some offices don't practice dual agency, then you would use a single agency addendum, which says that you are only representing the buyer. You would just add this on. You see, so this is a single agency addendum form. So if you don't practice dual agency, then you would say, because this agreement says that you may be a dual agent, if your office does not practice dual agency, attach this to this buyer agency contract, check single agency addendum, and this basically says that the broker does not represent the buyers and sellers in the same transaction, and the broker only represents buyers and sellers, well, if there's designated. So I'm not getting that. But if you don't practice dual agency, then use that form. Also, buyers have, go down, buyer has read and received the consumer notice. The buyer has read the entire contract before signing. Buyers must sign this contract. Keep this in mind. I'll tell you one thing that many agents violate. There's a section 604 of the Real Estate License and Registration Act says that any time your client signs a document, you must give them a copy at the time that they sign. Not tomorrow, not later, at the time they sign. Many agents, brokers violate this every day. If you go to someone's house and they sign a document, you must have a copy there for them. If they can take a picture or whatever, but if you're dealing with older clients, they're not taking no pictures. They don't know what the cloud is. They don't know you need to take 2 copies. Anytime you meet anybody outside of your office, have 2 copies of everything so that at the time they sign, you give them a copy. I like giving them have 2 originals. Then I have an original, they have an original, but they have to have a copy. If you walk away and you give them a copy tomorrow, you violate section 604 of the Real Estate License and Registration Act, which requires you to give a copy of any document your client signs at the time that your client signs it. All right. I can tell you 99% of agents violate that. Don't be one that does. All right. I wish I had more time, but it's 11 o'clock, but I wanted to talk about the buyer agent. Can I say one last thing? The buyer financial, you all say is a good thing to do the buyer's financial at the time that you sign this. One thing I get a lot of questions about, one thing I want to point out on buyer's financial. If you know where it has the assets on the buyer's financial, you all familiar with that? On the buyer's financial information where it has assets. A lot of times people, let's say my buyer needs $30,000 to close, but my buyer has $300,000 in the bank. How much would I have to show? How much of his assets would I have to show?
30,000.
30,000. That's the only thing I want to point out. Sometimes agents think that if the person has 300,000 in the bank, and that you somehow lying or being deceitful because you're only saying, the only thing this says is that you have to show enough money you have to have enough money to close. You have to have the down payment closing cost. Your client may be a millionaire. I had a client who was a billionaire, and I would not want to show that she had $1 billion in the bank. That would have hurt us when we were making an offer on a property. You think that would help? No, well, she can afford to pay, and we were trying to get it at a discount. And we did, but if they knew she was a billionaire, I guarantee you we wouldn't have gotten a discount. But let me just read that one section. It says, under assets is for purchase involving mortgage financing, disclose at least a minimum net worth of liquid assets and amount of the down payment plus closing costs. So that's all you have to show. You don't have to show. So if I need 10,000, now I wouldn't just show 10,000. I may show more because I may have a seller who says, wait a minute, this buyer only has 10,000. What if something happens in his or her life in the next 60 days? They may not be able to buy the house. So you have to be a little smart about it. If you need 10,000 closed and they got 50,000 in the bank, maybe you show 18,000. But you want to have some way, because you don't want that seller to say, I'm not taking that offer because they may not have enough money to close. Last thing on the buyer agency contract, the last thing would just be the broker, the name of the company. Make sure you always write the full name of the company, and then you will put your name and date and give a copy of this to your buyer. And that is exactly 11 o'clock according to my watch. But I'm okay if you all have questions. Well, if they don't kick me off. Any questions? Was that helpful to you all?
Yes. That was helpful. I have one question, if you don't mind me asking. So if your brokerage does practice dual designated agency, in section 4 of the buyer agency agreement, where it says like you have to check that box if designated agency is not applicable,
right?
Is it redundant if you don't check that and then also check off and attach the single agency addendum?
No, but that's different. So designated agency and single agency are different. Designated agency is an in-house thing. That just means that instead of you allow, instead of having dual agency, you have one agent represent the seller and a different agent represent the buyer. But you could still be, oh, wait, what, I'm sorry, maybe I'm not misunderstanding. So ask your question again.
So for
you're
example,
saying-
my brokerage, we only have agents who work with buyers. So I only work with buyers all the time, and we have agents who only work with sellers all the time.
Okay.
So would I need to then attach a single agency addendum in this case,
No.
or no?
No, I would not in that
Got
case.
it. Okay. All right.
No,
Thank
I
you.
would not. I misunderstood you. Any other questions? Any comments? Did you all learn anything new today?
A lot.
Good. All right, since you all are quiet, I thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank
And
you.
I'm going to go down to the beach for a
Thank
little
you.
bit.
Always a pleasure.
Oh, thank you so much.
Okay, folks. So first, let's say thank you to everyone for contributing today. Great comments, questions, community learning here. Thanks to Trent for making himself available on such a beautiful day down in South Florida. But we also appreciate your expertise and what you bring to the table and your ability to go ahead and host such a great conversation with our folks. So everyone will be posting this recording up on our YouTube channel. That should be up there within a day or so. Feel free to go ahead and check that out. And with that, have a great rest of the day and have a great weekend. Thank you very much, Trent. Take care.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Have a
Thank
great
you.
day.
Thanks, Trent.
You're welcome. Thank you.